Hi. For those that don't know me, I am Shirley, and my channel is about DIY and budget projects and how to save money doing a very expensive hobby like fish keeping. And of course, you can't really cut corners on a lot of things because they're living animals, living beings, and you've got to take care of them correctly. So, one of the things I like to do to offset costs, especially for food, because food is like seriously one of the things that just really comes out of pocket because it's one of the things you can't really um, cut corners on. It's one of those things you can't just buy the cheapest and just feed them one thing and that's it. In order to have really healthy fish that thrive and live longer, you need a variety of foods, especially, and you really need to add things like live and frozen foods if you can get your hands on them. Most pet stores, even Petco and PetSmart, sells frozen foods. I'm having a little bit of difficulty, honestly, finding live foods in any of the pet stores. They just don't carry them. So you can buy cultures online. Sometimes you can buy them in pet stores, or maybe you've got a friend that has cultures. So it's not hard to come by, really. And it's a little of a investment. However, when you've got it, if you do the culture in a sufficient manner and you keep it up with refreshing it and splitting it, all that jazz, then you can potentially have microworms for as long as you have fish. Now, of course, you're going to find times where you're busy and things happen and cultures crash. So, my advice is have multiple cultures and to maybe give them, pass them on to family or something. So that way, if something happens to your cultures, you've got somebody else that's got a starter and you don't have to pay as much, like for a starter from online or from your pet store. Because, like I said, they're not super cheap. They're not out of this world expensive, especially for what it is, but they're not great. So today I want to talk to you about microworms. That's what one of the things that I culture. I also culture vinegar eels, brine shrimp, white worms, and I think that's it. White worms, vinegar eels, microworms. Oh, black worms. Sorry, forgot black worms. Um, and so now there's many ways to culture microworms. Well, not really many ways, so much as many media you can use. Some people use bread, some people use oatmeal, some people use mashed potatoes. Those are usually seem to be the three most common things, but you can use most starches like baby cereal, regular cereal, things like that. Buns, hamburger buns, anything like that. You can use it. The things you're going to need to culture is you're going to need your starter culture, of course. Oh, that's not my starter. Here, let me find my starter. Starter culture. And as you can see, it doesn't look very appetizing. It's all mostly waste by this time. That's why I'm splitting it. These are already cultures I have, but you do the same thing even if you're getting a starter culture. You do the exact same thing. So you're going to need the container. I use these 32 ounce, I think, deli cups because they're tall enough where I have plenty of room to put the media, and the worms have plenty of room to crawl up. It's not necessarily necessary to have one that's tall so much. You can use the 16 ounces, but I find these make a little less of a mess. Also, you're going to want lids, and as you can see, mine has a hole in them. You cannot put a solid lid on top of your container or else you will smother your microworms. You're going to want to cut a hole, poke some holes, something. Now, you do not want bugs getting in here because that will crash your culture and really, it's just not good. So you're going to want, if you put a big hole like this, you're going to want to put something on it that breathes or in it. I use some polyfill. That stuff really saves my life. Like seriously, I use it everywhere. Anyway, put a small amount of polyfill, if I can find some over here, and just put it through, and that allows the oxygen to pass through without allowing any bugs. You're also going to need your media. Now, like I said, bread, oatmeal, Mashed potatoes. Those are seriously the most common that I've noticed. You're also going to need some yeast, and you're going to need either some warm to hot water or milk. You can use milk too. I haven't tried milk, so I'm not sure if it really would make any difference or not. Um, today, sorry. Today I'm going to try 3 different medias, the 3 common medias, because usually I use bread, but I want to see if there's any difference, like if one does better than the other, one breaks down less or it stinks less. I've heard so many times, oh, this stinks less. No, this stinks less. This stinks less. So far, the bread doesn't really stink. It smells like yeast, like rising bread, until it gets really nasty. And then it just kind of smells like spoiled rising bread. It's not horrible. It's just not very pleasant either. So I'm going to try 3 different medias and I'm going to see how they go. So we've got our 3 containers here. Let's start with this one. And let's start with the bread because that's what I have used in the past, so I'm more familiar with it. Now I just take, probably for a container this size and for as much of the media as the cultures I'm putting in it, I use about 2 pieces of bread. Now I will tell you, these cultures, as much as it's in there, could probably make way more than 2. But the more worms from your culture, from your starter, that you put in your new culture, the faster it's going to grow. Granted, the faster it's going to decompose the media, but you'll have a lot more worms a lot quicker. Smaller amounts, of course, are going to take smaller to reproduce, smaller to see, etc., etc. So, 2 pieces of bread. That's about what I do. You can probably use whole wheat, anything. It's pretty much anything you've got around your house is going to be sufficient. Another thing I've seen a lot of is people cutting the crusts off their bread and cutting up into nice little pieces. The worms don't care. They're not toddlers. They don't care if there's crust. They don't care if it's in nice little squares. They don't care. And since I'm too lazy to go get a knife and think it's ridiculous to cut this up like that, I'm just going to tear it up into little pieces and drop it in. Hold on, now let me do this and I'll show you what I got. So, and it doesn't have to be uniform, doesn't have to be perfect. Doesn't have to be fresh bread. It can be stale bread if you want. I just don't know if it would be a good idea to have moldy bread because, again, I don't know how mold is going to react in the culture. So here is what we've got. It looks like a lot, but we're about to wet it down, and so by the time we wet it and mix it, it's going to lower, I don't know, to like an inch or so, something like that. So now you do not want it liquidy. You want it like kind of a, I don't know, like a thick mud consistency. So I'm just going to, a little bit at a time, add some water. See, I've got some water in a container, and I'm using a turkey baster. That makes it, for me, easier to handle. And I'm just going to put a turkey baster in here. One sec. Okay, turkey baster full of water in here. Mix it up real good. With 2 pieces of bread, that seems to be plenty. It's a little wet, but as long as there's no standing water or you can't squeeze it and loads of water comes out, it should be fine. You just want like a mushy media. And I am squishing it down, kind of like packing it down a little bit. It doesn't have to be super tight. I do it to make it easier. And as you can see, there's not a whole lot in there after it's been, okay. I forgot to add yeast. Now, you can add it before or after the water. It doesn't matter. But I was going to do it before I packed it down because I like to mix it up in it. So we're going to use some yeast. And now I just get a little bit and sprinkle it in there. I don't think it hurts to have too much yeast. And I really think it seems to make the media more microworm friendly, I guess. I don't know. They seem to like it better. They seem to grow faster. I'm not guaranteeing that. It's just what I've observed. Anyway, throw a little bit of yeast in here. enough to sprinkle, make maybe a light dusting over it. And then we're going to stir it up a little bit, so that way the yeast has plenty of, it's mixed in there plenty so it can react with the bread. And again, pack it down. I don't really know if it matters if you pack it down or not, but I don't know. It just seems like a step to do. And it seems to help because it's easier to spread the culture on it with it packed down, lightly packed down. Now, the microworms will not, you don't need a big, you don't need a large amount of media because the microworms do not go down into it. They stay on top of it. They eat, not really sure what part of it they eat. I've been told it's the yeast. I've been told it's the bread. I've been told it's the yeast interacting with the starch and it produces a byproduct that, you know, that the microworms eat. Long story short, it doesn't matter. You got to have the media and they're going to produce waste. It's going to get liquidy. And then at that time, about anywhere from 2 to 4 or 5 weeks, it just depends on the kind of media you use, how wet you make it, how much media, how fast microworms reproduce, etc., etc. Just keep a watch, and if it starts looking like this, where it's changed colors and it's kind of liquidy, and you know, it can, when you put it up like this, it kind of pours a little bit. You're going to want to refresh or split your culture, because past that it's going to crash and you're going to be without a culture. Again, that's the reason why I recommend splitting your culture into at least 2, your starter culture into at least 2 if you've got enough. If you don't, then when you start your first culture, when it gets big enough and you have to refresh it, then I would split it, because by then it's going to be enough for you to split. So anyway, got it packed down, and I'm going to sprinkle just a tad more yeast over it, just another light dusting, and get that on there. And then here comes action. You're going to take your starter culture, and this is one of the cultures I already had, and you're going to take a big spoonful, or as much as you want. You can do small ones too, and it'll just grow a little bit slower. You'll have to give it a little more time before you start harvesting it. And we're going to put this in here. Now, I scrape out as much as I can get here, because I'm not keen on wasting things that I've spent money on, especially when they can grow and produce more. I try to make that as easy as possible. Okay, we're gonna put a big gloop in there, and then we're gonna spread it around to where it's even. Now, I used to sprinkle yeast on top, but then I found out, or I was told, that the yeast on top does nothing because they don't eat it. They eat the byproduct. Again, that's what I was telling you earlier. Not really sure how accurate that is. But it doesn't seem to make a difference to put it on top, so I don't see the point in wasting the yeast. So we've got that on there. Next thing you're going to want to do, put your lid on and label it. That is seriously one of the important things, because you're going to want to keep track of when you put it in, so you know, have a better idea of whether you should be splitting the culture or not. So I just label M worms, and this time I'm going to put what media I use beside it, because I'm trying to keep track of which one does best. So I'm just going to put in parentheses bread and write the date underneath it. 24. And then I'm just going to stick it right here on the lid. Now you don't have to have labels. I mean, I already had them laying around, so I'm using them, but you can use a permanent marker or anything that'll write on the plastic if you'd like, or you can get a piece of paper tape. So, but this is the bread culture. We're going to see how that one works. Okay, next one I'm going to try is the, hold on, don't want to show the brands. Potatoes, mashed potatoes. So as you can see, mashed potatoes on there. And this is about it's pretty much the same process. The only thing really changing is the media. So I'm going to put about same amount in there. Let me see if that's enough. Maybe it's enough. We'll see. These don't compress like bread does. So it's, ooh, that is way too much. I don't know. I think we can make it work. That's not too bad. And again, throw some yeast in here. Now, the thing with mashed potatoes is that you don't want them liquidy. You want them kind of like you would make for yourself. I don't know anybody that's got any sanity that would like potatoes that they can drink. So, yeah, you want a thick, wet consistency. I'm going to try to start with one little tubeful and stir that around. Actually, I can already tell that's not going to be enough. I'm using like as warm as it'll come out in the tap of water because it kind of, it's not too hot where you have to wait on it to cool, but at the same time it actually absorbs better into the oats and into the mashed potatoes. So, oh, I think I might have put too much in there. Now, one thing when you do these potatoes, if you put too much water in it, you have two choices. Sorry, this is my dog. You have two choices. You can either take a paper towel and, you know, kind of soak up the liquid, or you can add more potatoes. There's a problem with adding more potatoes. You'll end up adding more potatoes and then more water and then more potatoes and more water. Next thing you know, you've got half a cup of media that's not necessary. So if you do choose to add the potatoes, again, add them a tiny bit at a time. So, stir, stir, stir. And this is still not enough water. I mean, it almost is, but there's still dry pieces in it. So I'm going to add, I don't think it being dry is helpful at all. I'm pretty sure it needs to be decently damp. So I'm going to throw some more in here. But this time, since it's almost done, I'm going to not put the whole thing. I'm just going to put a little at a time because I don't want to overdo it and get in that situation we're talking about. Okay. This is much better. So, and just like you did with the bread, gonna level it out and kind of squish it down a little bit because it just makes it easier to spread the culture, I think. I'm not really sure if it makes any difference other than that. If I can get the stuff off the spoon. Okay, and again, throw a little yeast over the top. All right, and we are going to spread the culture. Of course, I'm trying to do something in front of the camera, and the lid doesn't want to cooperate. So, all right, big chunk of the culture. I'm only splitting these in two because, like I said, it'll make it grow faster to have more culture in each container. And I already started with 3 cultures, and I'm splitting it into 6. So if I don't have enough cultures as backup, I'm probably doing something wrong. Okay, here we go. I think that's enough. Spread it around. Oh, one thing I forgot to add in the last one, I think maybe I forgot to add it, is I like to take a paper towel and wipe down the sides. It's not necessary, honestly, because the media is not going to hurt if it gets in your tank. As long as you're not throwing, you know, fingerfuls or spoonfuls of the media in your tank, it won't be a problem. And I don't really think that would hurt too much other than make your water a little foggy and gross and you'd have to do a water change. So, we've got this in here, and I'm going to take a paper towel. And I'm just going to run it along the inside of the container. Sorry, I have teenagers getting in my way. Well, a teenager. Anyway, run it along the inside of the container. And that not only helps keep it nice and neat and get you less media in your water, but it helps you be able to see when the microworms start climbing up the sides. And that's when you know it can be fed, is when you've got a lot of microworms climbing up the side. Give it a day or two at least before you start worrying about whether the culture's taking off or not. Give it a couple of days. So, and then, like I have been doing, I'm going to put the lid on and date it, label it, etc., etc. And I will do that off camera so that way we're not wasting a lot of time. Next, I am going to do the oats. Now, we ran into a little problem whenever I was gathering the supplies for this. I had a box of instant oats or quick oats, whatever you want to call it. And I was going to use that because they were unflavored and plain. But then when I opened the box, apparently it had gotten wet and there was clumps of mold in it. Now, it's possible that it might not hurt anything, but I'm not running the risk. I'm not going to crash my culture just because I used moldy stuff. So instead, I'm going to run the risk that adding flavoring and sugars to your oat and using a flavored oatmeal might not be the best. But that's what I got. Packets of flavored oatmeal. I'm not going to show you the brand. And these seem to work, I think, if you use about 2 packets. Oh. If we use about 2 packets of this, just gonna pour these in here. It's same process. I mean, honestly, if you don't want to finish watching this part, you can fast forward through it. I completely understand. But again, drop the oats in. Now this is how much is in there. I'm going to see if that's enough, but honestly, I don't really think it's gonna be. Actually, let's just not waste time. I'll just put both packets in. But if you're, it's definitely not necessary to use flavored because I do not know how that's going to work. But I really wanted to try all 3 medias. So I didn't want to just not do oats because those were not bad. Unflavored oats is, unflavored quick oats is much cheaper. So, you know, do with it what you will. Again, yeast. And water. Oh, I just sprayed water everywhere. That was wonderful. And we're gonna, and again, warm water works best because these oats will absorb it and cook a little faster and get mushy faster. And since that's my last packet of oats, I probably shouldn't add too much water at once. And stir, stir, stir. And again, this is easier than even the mashed potatoes with the water because I have actually put too much water in it, I believe. Yeah, I have. It's really a pain in the butt to try to pour it out without pouring out the oats, especially considering the fact that there's not much water in the first place. So I'm going to try the paper towel trick and hope that that's enough to get all the oats out. Because again, do not want it liquidy or it will drown your non-aquatic worms. They are non-aquatic. They can live in water for a couple of hours. I think one person said like 8 hours. Another person has said a couple of days. I know they can live for a short amount of time. That's all you're getting from me on that subject. But just pat the top of it to get all the excess water out, all the standing water. And I put a lot more in here than I meant to. So we're going to pat these. And I almost wish I had more oats because despite me telling you that it's a bad idea to add and add and add, there's a lot of water in here. I might have to use a couple of paper towels. So let us take care of that real quick and I will be right back. Okay, so we have got the not so liquidy but kind of goopy oats. I almost forgot what it was. And I'm gonna throw some yeast on top because I do have yeast mixed in. Yeast on top to help it out a little bit. Take the last of the culture and spread it on. And I am trying to decide. I think what I will do is go ahead and show you guys this video because it's getting long anyway. go ahead and show you guys this video, and then if there's any significant differences among media or anything special that you guys need to see, I will show you that in a different video with the results of what I found out, and maybe show you how to like in person feed this stuff instead of just explaining it. So this really liquidy culture, and you can't see it, but on this, I don't know if you can see the little glistening that's on it, but those are microworms. The brown stuff is just the media and their waste. So you just spread that around the top, lid, label, store it somewhere. Not sure if I mentioned this, but you can store it somewhere, pretty much anywhere. Room temperature works best, 60 to 80 degrees, about there. The higher it is, the faster they reproduce. The lower it is, the slower they reproduce. You can put them in the fridge to kind of preserve them, but they won't build up like they do at room temperature. I couldn't think for a minute. At room temperature, I do not believe that a light place or a dark place really makes a difference, because I've had them on top of my tank, near and under my tank lights, and I've also had them in a little cubby underneath my tanks that is dark. It's completely shadowed. So, and I've had success both ways. It doesn't seem to make a difference. So anyway, wipe this down, wipe the outside down, or no, the inside down of the container. And then lid, label, store. And the thing, I'm not sure if I mentioned this already, but the way you feed it, the microworms crawl up the sides. They only crawl little ways. If you leave them for a long time, they might crawl quite a bit, but they don't crawl super high. You just see like a ring, a translucent ring around it, sometimes taller, sometimes shorter, and then you just dip your finger in, or if you think it's gross, you can use a Q-tip, paintbrush, something like that you can rinse in the water, and you just scoop it out. Try not to get as much media try to get as little media as you can. Scoop it out and just swirl it around in the water, and the worms will come off and the fish will eat the worms. It's pretty simple. Trying to remember if I thought of everything. Oh, some people do rinse them. I mean, I don't see it necessary because the media is not going to hurt anything. And so some people do rinse them though. They take the Q-tip or the paintbrush, they hold it over a filter, a coffee filter, and they spray it down with water until all of it comes off and all the media comes off, and let the media and the water that they've sprayed over it go through the filter. Take the filter and get a bowl of water upside down and swirl it around in there until all the microworms come off the filter, and then they've got a clean microworms in the water, and they can just pour the microworms in the tank. It's simpler, in my opinion, to just do the finger method or Q-tip or whatever without rinsing. So that, I believe, is all. If I've missed anything, or you have a different experience, or any tips, tricks, etc. for growing microworms, or even if there's a specific video content that you would like to see, I do try to get to all of the comments and reply back. So if you just leave me a comment, like, share, all that stuff you already know about, I would be extremely grateful. And I do want to say thanks for watching. Have a sincerely wonderful day, and don't forget to roll those sleeves up. Peace out.